Hey guys, 1848, Revolutions of 1848, I should say, section 9.5. We're going to go through this section pretty quickly because in the olden days of AP Euro, this was a really important topic, but I don't see it as being such a big thing. Now, really, the only things we need to know is why it is a huge turning point in European history. In terms of the action inside of it, it's not as much importance. So here's our menu. We're going to go through it, like I said, pretty quickly. Now, Unit 9, come to recap where we've been. Wait, I need to start PowerPoint. That would be a good idea. There we go. That's better. Now, where we've been is we have seen 1815, Napoleon is ushered out of Europe for a second time as he is defeated at Waterloo. We see the Industrial Revolution taking off and providing different ways of looking at the economy and social structures. So the whole of Unit 9 has been, how do we deal with these challenges of the Industrial Revolution? Oh, you don't have to be, you can interrupt. That's okay. You don't have to do that. I have been delivered a toothbrush and a flashlight. Very fun. What else, Stephen?
My phone.
Oh, she was fun. Okay. So we've been interrupted.
Russia.
Yes, it says Russia on this. Yes, sorry. Okay, so we were talking about the challenges that come with those two revolutions. And Unit 9 has been very much of a reaction against the challenges, or the progress, if you want to use that word, that the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution have brought. Certainly conservatism has been trying to go against those things, and liberalism has been measured progress. Nationalism, of course, has been trying to enhance the view that your national pride should be high. Romanticism was another belief of kind of going to the past and showing that. So certainly socialism is really addressing the challenges of it. So all those isms were different ways of looking at it. And over the course of the first part of the 1800s, those challenges had been really pushed and really building. Right, and building the pressure on European society. In 1830, we have kind of a spilling over, and then we're going to have another spilling over of discontent in 1848 as challenges of the French and the Industrial Revolution again come to the head with those who are on the conservative leadership. So let's look at an overview, just a brief overview of why this year is so important. It's a series of revolutions throughout urban areas in Europe. This is not a rural revolutionary year, kind of like we saw in the French Revolution in 1789, where it extended to the countryside. You really don't see that in 1848. It's primarily an urban revolutionary moment. It's a turning point in the 19th century for sure. Triggered by our isms, right? Nationalism, liberalism, romanticism, a lesser extent socialism, fighting against the dominant conservative leadership and conservative reaction. So, but we have other causes, right? I mean, that's an ideological thing, but there's other things that really make revolutions start. And of course, if you're going to have people mad, you're going to have food supply problems. Shockingly, in urban areas across Europe, there is a lack of bread due to some poor harvest in 1846 and 47. Coincidentally, in 1846, you have an event in Ireland called the Irish Potato Famine, which restricts potato production to go across Europe. And that, of course, could also lead to the food supply issue. Industrialization and the problems that go along with that. Certainly social problems, high unemployment. So there's a lot of people who are out of work and aren't able to work. Investment bubbles burst. It's a little more detailed. We're not going to dive into that. And agricultural bust, which can kind of connect back to the food supply problems. So it's really, again, the idealism of the isms, but then certainly food supply and industrial problems that people face in the cities. Now, there are going to be two places, though, in 1848, two major places, I should say, that will not see any sort of revolution. And those two will be England and Russia. Those are the two major countries of ours, say the big five, that you won't see it. Now, in other places, you see in France, you see in Italy for sure, you see in Prussia, you see in Austria, you're going to see revolutions there. The question is, why don't you see them in England or in Russia? Well, in England, as we talked about in section 9.3, Parliament has been making changes throughout the first part of the 19th century to enhance liberal reforms, to enhance political freedoms, so that a lot of different people have an ability to have a voice in government. More people can vote, more people are represented, factory conditions are being protected, a little bit. So certainly it's more liberal over there. Now, in Russia, things are too conservative. There is 0, and if not 0, maybe 0.1 of the population that is deemed middle class. Now, if I get out my marker here, one thing that we're going to track here for the next couple of units is that the farther east you go, the more conservative you get. Now, if you are more conservative, that means the changes that have happened to society over here have not moved this way. And the changes, the two big ones, are the French Revolution and the ideas of the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. Those changes have not happened, so Russia is too conservative to have a middle class or proletariat-led revolution. So it's too conservative, and certainly if we think back of the Decembrist Revolt in 1825, that in section 9.3 as well, then you can have an example of certainly a conservative reaction, and that stays throughout. So again, here's kind of a big picture. You need to understand, the farther east you go, the less influenced the culture has been by the French Revolution and then the Industrial Revolution. The slight example, or the not example, whatever word that means it's the one that's not. Crap, what is it? The only exception, there it is. The only exception to that model, you could probably say, is Spain. Spain is probably in this range, in kind of the East Central Europe in terms of industrialization. Portugal the same way. They're a little behind, so you have these countries here which are farther ahead. Looks like Maisie's trying to let herself into the room here, so we'll bid her here. Hello, friend. All right. Maisie is going to join us here for... She's fine. Yes, she's okay. She's going to join us to talk about France in 1848. Are you excited about that? Look at you. So excited. So, Clemens von Metternich, you got to remember from section 9.1, the Austrian foreign minister, the architect of the Congress of Vienna, the man who said that we're going to go take Europe back to where it was before the French, and to a lesser extent, the Industrial Revolution. He also had a very famous quote that said, when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches a cold, meaning that when you see revolutionary in France, all of Europe is going to kind of see effects of that, and you're going to see others try to copycat what the French are doing. You saw it in 1789, you saw it in 1830, and now you're going to see it in 1848. So let's flash back in France to the year 1830. Okay, revolutions across the country chased out the Bourbons. So the kings, the Bourbons, Louis XIV, Louis XVI's family is finally out of power, and they install a new king, a cousin of the Bourbons. His name is Louis Philippe. He becomes known as the bourgeoisie king because a lot of his policies really do support middle class or bourgeoisie interest. And because of that, I understand. Yes, I know. Do you want to get down? Okay. Jeez. So, bourgeoisie interest. And what we mean by that is... I'm going to shift change here. There we go. Bye, Maisie. Okay, so what we mean by that, bourgeoisie king, he's going to be supporting a lot of policies which support the middle class, which support the factory owners. Remember, we talked about how the French government invests a lot in industrialization. Here we see that playing out. So Louis Philippe's going to be on train with that. And again, one of the associations I want you to make is when you hear bourgeoisie, you're also thinking liberal, okay? So all of the kind of the liberal interest, that's what he's trying to do. However, we go 18 years and things are getting a little bit stale in France. The economy's slowing down, you have high unemployment, you have food supply problems, and people are getting tired of the bourgeoisie king, the working class. Even liberals who don't see enough progress or what they want, and the nobility even, because of the association with the middle class. So nobody is happy with Louis Philippe, and the king was forced to abdicate in February of 1848. That is, the abdicate, of course, means to give up the throne. So now France is at a crossroads. What do we do from there? So at that moment, the French decide, 1848, following this trend of liberalism across the western part of the continent, to declare themselves as a republic. Now, we've seen this before, right? It's a second. We've seen it before. The first republic was with Robespierre, the French Revolution. So now, hopefully, this one will have less guillotines, maybe a more successful democratic rule. So it's influenced by Louis Blanc, who we've talked about as a socialist national workshops influence. So there's Louis Blanc right there. And it certainly looks like that this government is going to be more open to solving the problems of the French people. And again, Louis Blanc, kind of his major belief, is to guarantee national employment and full employment by having government-run workshops. Well, the people love that idea. And for the first part of 1848, it seems like this republic is going to be doing things to help the working class. Now, as time goes by in that year, after April elections, Louis Blanc is not elected. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute. Like, all the people like really want Louis Blanc's ideas. Well, guess what? All the people don't vote. And a lot of the people voting are the bourgeoisie. So they vote out a lot of people like Blanc himself, who would have favored more socialist rather than liberal ideas. Remember, liberals do not want freedoms, political freedoms, extended to the lower classes, right? The dumb masses of people. So the poor get triggered when they see their guy, Blanc, and others sent out of the assembly and the workshops are closed. So we get to June of that year. This is called the June Days, and this is a revolt led by the working class across Paris and across other major French cities, but mostly Paris. And the National Guard teams with the bourgeoisie to crush the lower classes. Now, the workers are wanting, again, redistribution of income, national workshops. They had no political voice, and the bourgeoisie and the military come together to really crush that idea. Now, what happens here, and this is kind of a visual of revolution, is that in the course of this revolution, the lower classes, while revolting, you see it a little bit earlier, 1830, 1832 as well, they throw up barricades in the street. So what these are, if you know Les Mis, you're really familiar with these, is you take any random pieces of furniture you can find, and I'm looking for that, but I'm struggling to find anything. You know, here's Piper's dog pen. Maybe I can. Okay, so like here's where Piper stays, right? So what you want to do is take all the random furniture you can find, okay? And then I don't like that. I like this picture better. Take all the random furniture you can find. I don't think so. Whatever. And then you're going to throw it all into the street and block the streets, right? So that the National Guard cannot get to you. And then what you're going to do is guard yourself behind these big pieces of furniture or whatever you can find to kind of make, you know, a barrier, a barricade. And then you're going to try to pick them off from behind the barricade, because if the National Guard gets a clean shot at you, you're dead, all right? There's no chance that you're going to survive that onslaught. So that can kind of make these barricades can kind of make the revolutions and the fight go a little bit longer. But the working class is hopelessly outgunned, and their revolution fails miserably. Now, out of all this, the National Assembly decides, again, the legislative body here, they decide, you know what, we got to do something that makes sure we have a strong president that can handle any sort of conflict that comes forth in France. So what they do is they create a constitution. They write a constitution for France to go forward, which allows for the strong president. Now, wouldn't you know it, they have an election. Wouldn't you know it, this guy named Louis Napoleon wins. But guess what? Louis Napoleon is the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte. So imagine, right? Celebrity name. You get this guy running. His uncle made France great again. Well, guess what? We're going to get Napoleon to run for Napoleon's nephew to run for president. And he becomes the president of the Republic. So we're going to come back and see Louis Napoleon Bonaparte later, but this is how he becomes in charge. And when we come back and see him later, we'll know kind of his origin story as it is. So, one second. I gotta pause for 1 second. Okay, back at it. So, like I said, we don't see just things happening in France. Now, France, I think that story is more interesting, kind of how you have the barricades and whatnot. But you also have, like, across the continent, revolutions having basically everywhere. And they're led mostly by liberals and romantics, okay? And romantics also can kind of take the form of nationalists too. So like in Italy, you have a guy named Giuseppe Mazzini, a romantic nationalist, someone who believes in the dream of a united Italy, tries to unite the country, the states, right, the different Italian states, fails miserably, right? He is not able to do that, but he is, in some cases, able to expel some French and Austrian influences. So we'll come back to Italy here soon and see how Mazzini may have been able to start a process that will soon be completed. In Austria, you see an empire face a revolt in one of its provinces, Hungary. The Magyar people, led by Louis Kossuth, Kossuth. And the Magyars are able to get some gains, and it causes enough commotion that Metternich actually has to flee. He has to run away and abdicate his position in the Austrian Empire as foreign minister. But the conservatives end up putting the revolt down, and Hungary stays a part of the Austrian Empire. Finally, the German states, very similar story in Italy. Instead of a romantic nationalist, they're liberals. They're bourgeoisie in the Prussian parliament who lead a push to unify the German states. However, the Prussian king eventually puts the revolt down. Prussian king, very conservative figure, puts the revolt down because he does not want to see Prussia, and let's be fair, Prussia, a very strong German state. He does not want to see the Prussian state influenced and tainted by the smaller German states creating one united German country. So that's kind of the story here. Italy, Austria, German states here in Central Europe is that romantic nationalists and liberals trying to upset the apple cart and unite countries, perhaps declare independence. We talk about nationalism, how it can be a different process, but most in Central Europe certainly fail. So there's Mazzini, and there is a German lady. Okay, so 1848, why did it matter? Kind of here's the take-home points. First of all, many revolutions were spontaneous. They did not have popular support. There was no organization to them. They just happened. They popped up, and there was no logistics for them to take down the conservative leadership. Now, the middle class, the bourgeoisie, you could have argued that the conservatives could have been thrown out of power in so many places if the bourgeoisie middle classes, the liberals, and the radical working classes had worked together. But they never did. The middle classes feared the radical working classes as much as they distrusted the conservatives, right? The nobility and the kings in leadership. So they could not work together. And in Central Europe, to be sure, you didn't see many changes because the conservatives basically could work together to take advantage of that split in order to keep control. You also see, especially in the Austrian Empire, you see that different ethnic groups cannot work together to take advantage of conservatives' weaknesses. And that, to an effect, is kind of true in Italy, too. But you see ethnicity be a dividing line in trying to break up some empires. And the last thing is that, and this is something we'll see going forward, is that nationalist unification movements in Italy and Germany, the attempt to take many different states and make them one, that movements will cease to be led by romantics and liberals. They will now be led by conservatives. So we're going to see in 10.1 an example of two conservative leaders, one in Germany and one in Italy, who use nationalism to enhance their own power. And that's what we're going to see as we go forward, is that unification, or bringing countries together, is not going to be led by a bourgeoisie factory owner who believes in the Enlightenment principles. It's not going to be led by a romantic who waves a flag, dreaming of a new era for their country. It's going to be led by a conservative who wants to enhance his own power. So that's where 1848 is important, is that the goal of unification in Germany and Italy, most notably, is going to be now driven by a conservative rather than romantics and liberals. And with that, we're almost at 20 minutes out of your hair. No, I don't want to keep ink annotations. That's unit.